Well, the British comedy invasion continues. Ricky Gervais, Sacha Baron Cohen, Russell Brand, who's been on this program, Simon Pegg, who will be on Q next week, are just a few UK exports that have become household names in North America. But you soon may be adding two more names to the list. Matt Lucas and David Walliams. In just 3 seasons of Little Britain, Lucas and Walliams have created some of the most outrageously odd, even politically incorrect characters, ones comics wouldn't dare perform this side of the Atlantic, one would think. But for their 4th season, that's exactly what Matt Lucas and David Walliams decided to do. The two comics packed up production in the UK and produced the entire series in America. The undertaking perfectly represents the convergence between American and British comedy, and at the same time forces questions about how these divergent and bitingly dissimilar worlds met in the first place. Joining us now are the two creators behind Little Britain, Matt Lucas and David Walliams, and they're live in our studio in New York City. Hello, lads.
Hello, Gian.
Hello, Gian.
Well, I'm glad that you finally made it.
Oh, yes.
I've been looking forward to this, and, you know, well, we've been waiting for you.
Gian, you don't remember me, but I was one of your enormously big fans of Moxie Früvous in the UK, and I used to follow you to lots of shows.
Matt, I've been told this, and it got me really happy because I'm a big fan of Little Britain. I had no idea. No, I don't. Did you look different back then?
No, I was. Well, I was more. I was
you were a little thinner.
I was
you were
a
still
little
bald.
thinner. I was. Thank you, David. Yes, I was a little slimmer, but I came to see you at the Borderline in London a couple of times, and I came to see you at the Edinburgh Festival a few times, and I sat in the front row and sang all your words, probably really distracting. and then I played the Phoenix Festival.
Oh, we played the Phoenix Festival.
I met you there, and I remember being stuck in traffic on the way out of the Phoenix Festival at about 1 in the morning, and you guys were a few cars ahead of us, and you got out and did an impromptu show.
Yeah, I totally remember that.
Yeah, so I saw you about 6 or 7 times, and I'm very upset you don't remember me. I'm actually really upset.
And do you remember, Gian, that we had an affair in the 80s?
I was just going to say,
remember that? It was very,
I do remember
a
that.
physical thing. We barely spoke.
That I remember. I've been trying not to.
Gian, I mean, quite wrongly, but not realising it was the wrong thing to do at the time, I smuggled my tape recorder into some of your shows, so I have bootlegs of your gigs.
It wasn't the wrong thing to do.
It was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I've always thought taping is okay. But listen, I've only got like 8 minutes left with you guys. I'm happy to talk about me, but can I ask you about Little Britain a little bit?
Yes.
I mean, you've said, interestingly, I'm going to dispense with you getting you to describe Little Britain for people on this side of the Atlantic who may not have seen it yet. I know there's cult fans across Canada. I mean, you guys had said previously that Little Britain was done after series 3 on the BBC. So besides big money from HBO, what appealed to you about producing the show in the USA?
Well, it wasn't actually big money. It was a lot less money than we get in England, but it was more just the opportunity to find an American audience. And we'd seen other British comedians, Sacha Baron Cohen, Ricky Gervais with Ali G in the USA, and extras having series there, and you know, especially Sacha, he went from 2 series on HBO to making, you know, one of the funniest movies ever made. So it just seemed too big an opportunity to pass up.
Plus, it gave us another opportunity, and that was that we were now able to write about things that we weren't able to write about in the original British programmes, because we were able to make observations about Americans and about what happens when British people go to America.
Right. Although your show is so quintessentially, sometimes offensively, sometimes lovingly British, did you have trepidation about how this is going to sell in America?
I think we just had to follow our instincts and hope that you know, that which was quintessentially British about us would be a selling point, because it's not something we can kind of conceal.
Yeah,
I
look
guess.
at Monty Python. That's a very strange piece of work, very British, and yet it's massive. You know, in America, and I guess it must be massive in Canada too. And so you can't really predict. You know, I think you've just, as Matt says, you've got to do what you do and hope people like it.
But having said that, what we've done is the original British programmes were set in Britain and were about life in contemporary Britain. So all the characters were British, and we played them all. But in the new version, Little Britain USA, we've actually the show is actually a celebration of the relationship between the British and the Americans, and so we filmed the show entirely in the US, and it's set entirely in the US. But we brought a lot of our British characters over there,
yes,
and found ways and reasons to have them in the show. But we also, probably 30 or 40% of the programme is actually us doing American accents and playing American characters. So we're giving that a go.
Having been given the opportunity to get a sneak preview of your first 3 episodes of Little Britain USA, the word celebration is an interesting one. I mean, it seems more like you're taking the piss not only out of the British now, but also out of the Americans. You said something about, Matt, you were saying this gives you the opportunity to do things you couldn't do before and explore the relationship between British and Americans. What kind of things does that include for you?
Well, I mean, in our show, for instance, we have a character who's 25 and he's still breastfed by his mother. And these are kind of upper-class British characters. And we kind of use that to explore in the original British programme the kind of difference between class, because you kind of tolerate eccentricity, I think, more from upper class people than you might do from middle class people somehow. And you imagine that they have very old traditions, and there's something a little impenetrable about them. And so we kind of use that here in this show by having these British relatives stay with their American cousins, to I don't know, can you help me, David?
I think the point Matt's trying to make, it's just about Americans' responses to British people in that particular sketch, and then we've got American characters too, and then we've got a narration which is going on about Tom Baker, who played Doctor Who in the 70s, narrated the show in Britain, and he'll say things like, our 2 great nations share a language and a love of war, things like that. So it's even a little political at times.
I wonder how A Little Britain USA is going to play in Britain, in the sense that it's one thing to make fun of your own people in your own country, but when you're sending up British people and British characters set in the United States, will people consider that dodgy or uncomfortable in your own country?
It's interesting. We don't really know. I mean, the show will air in Britain 5 days after it airs in America and 4 days after it airs in Canada. And so, I mean, we are going to find out how the British people respond to it. I mean, they haven't seen it yet, so we don't really know. But I think generally the public are quite pleased for performers from Britain who go over to America and make a bit of a splash there.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of continuity with the show. Like, we haven't taken British characters and made them American. We've just created new characters American. I think if we'd done that, I could understand there might be a little bit of a backlash in England because they think it was a kind of weird and dishonest thing to do.
I mean, it's sort of something that we considered in the very, very early days. We thought, well, we're making the show in America. Should we do what Ricky Gervais did with The Office and kind of transplant the whole format and make it purely about America?
Right.
And we could play American characters, and we could, we have a character in Little Britain called Dafydd who he believes himself to be the only gay in the village, and it's something that he holds on to very strongly, and he feels it makes him special, even though he's surrounded by other people who are gay. He's kind of in denial about that. And we sort of explored the idea of, well, could we call him Fernando and make him from Laredo, Texas? Right. But actually what we did instead was we kept Dafydd, but we had him go to university in America, where he proclaims himself to be the only gay on campus. So actually I think we were playing to our strengths in that regard, because I don't think we'd have felt comfortable Americanizing our own characters that we kind of know so well.
But I don't think anyone's ever really done that successfully either, in terms of actually done it themselves. If Ricky Gervais was in the American office with an American accent, it just wouldn't work.
No, I was going to say the Office model would have you finding a Matt Lucas and David Walliams who are American.
That would be fine, because then we just get to sit at home